Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. And you weren't really getting the long and the short of them. So maybe you have to work a little bit on that.
Okay.
Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. Mano Setha Mano Maya. All right, Alexander. But your pronunciation was really good.
Thank you.
I mean, it was really well done. It's just some constructive criticism. Alexander?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mano Pubbangama Dhamma Mano Setha Mano Maya Manasa Chepaduthena Bhasati wa Karoti wa Tato Nang Dukkha Man Veti Chakang wa Wahato Padang.
Good. That was really good. You missed one, I think. Say this word again.
Tato Nang, Dukkha Man Veti.
This is short.
Oh, okay.
Dukkhaman veti. Man is long. Dukkhaman veti. Ve is also long. Dukkhaman veti.
Dukkhaman Veti. Is that correct?
Yeah. Dukkhaman veti. Dukkhaman veti.
Thanks.
Okay, well done. Amar?
Mano Pubbangama Dhamma Mano Seti Mano Maya Manasache Paddutena Bhasati wa Karoti wa Tato Nam Dukkha Nam Veti Sakam wa Wahato Padam.
Pretty good. You messed up a few words, but that's okay. Just takes practice. This isn't seti, this is setha.
Oh yeah. Right.
Seti is a different word.
Right.
And I think you didn't quite get this one. I mean, it's fine. I don't expect you all to be perfect. I'm quite happy that you all tried. It's a great verse to remember. Sounds like you may have already known this verse.
Yeah. I've known a couple of Dhammapada, including too.
Okay, next. Andrew, we did already. Mark?
Mano Pubbangama Dhamma Mano Setha Mano Maya Bhasati wa Karo
Manasa.
Manasa Chepaduthena Bhasati wa Karoti wa Tato Nan Dukkhaman Veti Chakam wa Wahato Padam.
Good memorization. Your meter's not great, but again, I don't expect you all to be perfect at it. Takes practice. But remember long and short. One thing to remember as well is for like one like this, it's a long syllable, but the vowel is still short. So you can't say this as ban. It has to be bun, bung, bung. But you pause after the bung, gama. Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. You can't say bangama. It's not the long A. Even though it's a long syllable. You don't lengthen the vowel. You just take a pause after it. Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. Mano Setha Mano Maya. Sorry if I sound very critical. I'm I do mean to appreciate what you guys are doing, but
Oh no, you're totally fine.
I'm just gonna point out what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, thank you.
Matthew next.
Mano Pubbangama Dhamma Mano Setha Mano Maya Manasa Che Dukkhaman Veta Manasa Che Paduthena pasati va karoti va tato nam dukkaman veti chakkam va vahato padanti.
Good. Very good. Matthew F.
Mano pubangama dhamma manoseta manomaya manasa padutena pasati va karoti va tato nam dukkaman veti chakam va vahato padanti.
Okay, your meter still needs work. Again, I don't think meter's that big of a deal, but if you ever get into chanting, you guys might want to know it. So, just pointing out to you if you're interested to know that. And one thing about the way you did, I think also the other Matthew as well. You can't, for these ones. Conversely, you can't just pause. You have to lengthen it. So you can't say this is gamma, or these ones are not wa. They can never be wa, because the person listening won't know what you're saying. Wa is a completely different word. Wa is a word that you would see like this, but it means something completely different. You'll see this one here. This is a wa. This is actually its own word that's been squished with the chakkang. Chakkang is its own word. These should really be two words, but Pali does this. It puts things together. So chakkang wa. Wa here means like. Wa means or. And we'll learn about these much later.
So with the wa by itself, I'm just holding the a longer. Is that the difference?
Yeah, like we learned the alphabet. If you go through the alphabet, it's a, I, u, a, o. You have to be able to distinguish between a and a. Bhasati wa, karoti wa. So rhythm is one thing, and you have to work a little bit on that. But also, as I said, this one is long, but the vowel is short. This one is long, and the vowel is also long. So it's going to have a different sound.
Okay, thanks.
Ulu.
Mano pubangama dhamma manosetta manomaya manasa che paduttena bhasati va karoti va tato nang dukhaman veti chakang va vahato padanti.
That's pretty good. Rhythm pretty good. Royston?
Mano pubangama dhamma manoseta manomaya manasa che paduttena bhasati va karoti va tato nam dukkhamanveti chakkam va vahato padanti.
Good. Well memorized, everyone. Your rhythm is not very good. That wasn't in rhythm, but I mean that is how you would hear someone when they were actually speaking Pali, because of course you don't speak in rhythm. So it actually sounded like you were speaking Pali there. You have the best speaking sound, but I was hoping also to get you to know rhythm. So do try if you can, for if you ever chant these things, it would be, you couldn't chant it like you just said it. It would have to be more like mano pum banga ma dhamma mano se tam. And they do pause. It depends which tradition. So in Thai, it would be something like mano pum banga ma dhamma mano se ta mano maya. I can't remember my tones in Thai. Manasa che paduttena bhasati va karoti va tato nang dukhaman veti chakkang va vahato padanti something like that. Thai is a little more musical because of the tones. Sinhalese is also, they have their own way of making it musical. Khmer I like the best because they're the least musical. I like how they're very straightforward. Khmer chanting is my favorite, almost entirely favorite because of that. Their pronunciation's very good and they're very straightforward, just going to chant it, not make it into music. One problem with Khmer is they like to turn the long A's into Ia. So in Khmer this would be Matnopu Bangamia Dhammia, which is real strange. One thing I was going to say, remember these ones. You're correct that it's a cha, but it's not a cha. Chakang. It's not chakangwa because that would be a different word. It's chakangwa. Chak cha cha chakhang chakangwa kang. This is also ka. Chakangwa. Chakangwa. Chakangwa wahato padang. Chakangwa wahato padang. Okay, Sanda.
Mano Bubangamadama Mano Seta Mano
Maya.
Manomai Manasa Che Padutena Basatiwa Karotiwa Tatonan Dukamanveti Chakamwa Wahato Padanti.
Again, you're pausing in between, but your rhythm was still pretty good, apart from the pauses. So that's fine. Chakang Wawahato is actually a bit odd. Chakang Wawahato. They're all short, so it's Wawahato and it's long. Oh, Wawahato Padang. And so the actual verse is Padang, and many of you did it like that, but the way it's written, of course, is as a quote. So the N and the T, the N changes to because the Nigahita changes to an N because of the T, and you get Padanti. This you have to imagine it's not even there. So the way you'd say it is Padanti.
And then the down is long.
Which one?
It's stressed.
Padanti, yeah. Okay, we'll go back to our grammar. Good work, everyone. Thank you. That's appreciate, because you all just learned the first verse of the Dhammapada, which is an incredible thing. Even to have the Dhammapada available to us is something that's very hard to come across. And now you've all memorized the first and one of the most important verses. It's one that is well known in Buddhist circles. So if someone asks you about evil deeds, what makes a deed evil, you can recite this verse. I guess we'll get into what it actually means later on. You'll need to know stuff in it.
Bhante, I was going to ask you how you would translate dhammas in that one.
That one is actually dhammas. There are actually restricted to karma, the mental volition, javana. So the mental volition that constitutes kamma, cetana. I think that's how the commentary puts it. Because that's what the verse is really interested in. So when you talk about speaking or acting with an impure mind, the dhammas are the actions that involve the mind. Actually, I'm not, now that I think about it. Let's go take a look at what the commentary actually says.
I was going to ask because I always took it as being realities, or
well,
not
yes,
realities,
it is, but
aims.
in this verse exactly. In this verse, the commentary says the Buddha is actually thinking of. Here we are. Where's Dhamma? Oh wait, maybe no. Here we are. It's in the last one, I think. Here we are. Dhamma's realities. There are actually 4. Here, this one is just referring to. Right. So it talks about the many different kinds of dhammas. In this instance, Nisatta Jiva Dhammo, non-being Dhammo. So. Right. So it might be talking about vipaka in this case. I can't say exactly which one it's referring to. There's something to do with the karma, but whether it's referring to the vipaka or whether it's referring to the actual actions, I guess it's not necessarily referring to the actual cetana. But I guess the idea is that the acts or events or realities in this case, the actualization of something, so speaking or acting, is an actualization. It's a reality, and what's significant about them is the mind. That's the point. So if you talk about speaking, what kind of a speech was that? Well, it actually depends not on the speech itself, but on the mind. Could also be thought of as referring to the results. Anyway, something to investigate. I don't have an absolute answer on that.
Mate, before we go to the next section, I wanted to ask you about Burmese chanting, because it's really different from all the other ones, and also
I'd rather not, because it's not exactly all that useful for us. Let's move on because we're already 20 minutes in. If you want, we can talk about those things later. So today we're going to get into words, right? What we've talked about so far is basically letters, how things sound. When you put letters together, you get words. Ta-da! If you know anything about linguistics, this is moving from phonetics to, can't remember what is the words level?
Syntax?
Isn't syntax the relation?
Oh, morphology, I think.
Yeah, maybe morphology, that's the one. Anyway, not that important. What's important is to remember, and this is going to be, I guess this is going to be part of your homework. I don't want to push you too hard, so the next thing will be memorizing the things we talk about. So I'll have questions for you about these next week. You should know that there are 3 types of words, and that may seem like not so many, but the classification here is really based on how they are declined. And declined is just a fancy word for how their endings are changed, right? Declension has to do with the ending. It's nothing to do with declining something as we would use in actual English. But the word means relating to the ending, how it is ended. So Nāma, you modify their endings in a certain way. anything that's a Nāma will be modified in the same way. There are rules surrounding how Nāma are declined. There are rules, different rules and different sets relating to how akayata are declined, how their endings are changed. This is how you create meaning and syntax in Pali. You don't use prepositions, like if you talk about to the man, for the man, by the man, of the man, on the man, that sort of thing. Those prepositions are baked into the declension, the ending. And that would be with Nāma. But with verbs, like how do you tell it's a past tense verb, a present tense verb, etc., etc., passive, active, first person, third person, is all in the declension, how you change the ending of the word. This is not a, I don't think this is anyway. So you take a word, Nāma is actually a Nāma. It is its own type. So the word Nāma means name, and name is a Nāma. So Nāma is a Nāma. So you could take this word and you could decline it based on those rules. The third type, abhyaya, refers to any other word that isn't declinable. And what that means is it always, apart from sandhi, like sandhi means the connection, like when you mix, when you mesh two words because they go together, they squish together. Apart from that, the actual form of the word doesn't change. There's no declining. So that's the third type. Basically 3 types. And for grammar purposes, this is a very important distinction, simply because relating to translating from Pali to English, it's about being able to recognize the ending and know whether something is a Nāma or an akayata or an abhyaya. To give you your first clue as to what it's actually referring to, whether it's the thing being done or the thing doing the thing or the thing receiving and so on. So knowing which type of word something is your first step in translating. So Nāma means name, and so it refers to people, places, and things. But better than thinking like that, think of it first and foremost as a set of words that are declined in the same way. Because there are 3 types of Nāma, and they do all relate to names. They do all represent a reference to a thing, an entity. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, because name is a thing, right? But name isn't physical, but it's an entity. It's a concept. So things that are names, there are 3 of them. Things that are actually names, like names, are Nāma. Guna means quality. So these are names that are actually qualities of things. And Sabba Nāma, Sabba is a bit misleading because Sabba means all. But that's not quite what this means. Sabba Nāma is just a word used to describe what we would say in English pronouns. So they are imprecise, or they are shorthand, referring to something that's already been that's already understood, like a pronoun. Anyway, I'll explain these as we get into them. First thing to memorize is these 3. Second thing is these 3 types of Nāma. Nāma is divided. So Nāma is actual, what we would say in English, nouns. And in English we'd have, I can't remember what these are called, but these ones are proper nouns. I don't think these are called improper. I don't know what the English word for them is. Sadharana means public. Asadharana means private. But private just means there's only one. I mean, there haven't been actually more than one Sariputta, but they are still private. It's still referring to a specific instance of an entity. So it's not people, it's not man, it's that man, the name of that man. So Sariputta. They're just what we would call pronouns in English. Or no, proper nouns, sorry. Varanasi is the name of a city. Erawana is the name of an elephant. Whereas these ones, Purisa, man, is just an ordinary noun. It refers to a type of thing, a type of entity. Nagara, city, so any city is a Nagara. Hati is an elephant. Clear? You can interrupt if you have questions, please.
Yeah, Bhante, so which one means noun? Is it Nāma Nāma?
Nāma means noun, yeah.
And Nāma just means name?
Yeah. So these are actual names. The thing why they're all namas is because they're all name-like. And we'll get, let's look at guna nama and you'll see how that is. Like a guna nama, you think, well, it's not a name. It's a quality. Guna means quality. But it's used as a name. When we use them in English, we use these in English like that, like rich. Rich is an adjective. So guna nama are what we would call adjectives. But we use adjectives even in English like nouns. Like if I say rich, well, you can also talk about the rich. And the rich what? Well, the rich. Obviously, I mean people. Or I could say the poor, the homeless. But none of those are names. Yet we use them as names. Now, in Pali, that becomes even more important because, again, and remember this, they are declined, and in English we would say something like conjugated. It's a conjugation of sorts, but decline means specifically referring to the change of the ending. They are declined just as Nāma are, same way. And in fact, they can be used just as in English to replace the Nāma. So you have Purisa, which means man, and you could say Papa Purisa. Papa means evil, or you can just say Papa. Papa means the evil one. And the Buddha used this. He would refer to Mara as evil. He said Papa. I don't know if that's quite the word he used, but basically he said evil one, Papa. Papima, I think. He called him Papima, which is also an adjective. Well, yeah, it's also an adjective. Papa means evil, but you can just say Papo, one who is evil. And mostly you're just going to see this type. These other two are not that common, but important to remember them because they do exist. More evil, most evil. So we would call these what? Superlative? What's these ones? There's names.
I think that's right. Yeah, superlative.
Comparative.
Sorry?
Comparative.
This is comparative and this is superlative. That's what it is, I think. Something like that.
So.
Yeah, superlative is the highest.
Yeah. So more and most. Papia, more evil. Tasena deva papia yokudang patikuchati. It is the more evil to get angry at someone who was angry. Of the two, the getting angry at someone who is angry is worse than the person who got angry first. The saying. Okay. Fairly quick. There's not much yet to talk about with these, just to understand the difference. That the guna nama are used together with the nama. Now, one thing I can kind of jump ahead and say, and this is going to be important for a long time throughout your Pali career, an important rule to be able to remember, is that, excuse me, if you do put these two together, Papa and Purisa, they're both declined using the same rules, but also they share the same declension. And you'll learn about declensions later. But if evil is referring to the Purisa, then if Purisa is in a certain declension, then Papa will have to be in the same declension. If you use them together, Papa Purisa, it would be Papo Puriso, would be one declension, right? They'd be declined the same. Anyway, that's for later. That'll become clear as we look at declensions. Sabanama. Yeah, go ahead.
What does the adhi mean when it goes from like visesa to adhi visesa? What does that mean?
Adi is a prefix. We'll learn about them later. It means especially or exceedingly. Visesa means special. So these are the names of these. Pakati means ordinary. Visesa means special. Adi Visesa. These are just names for the type. You're never going to have to remember these. Although, I guess for next week, you're going to have to. Right? So you have to, let's recap. You're going to have to remember this and this, public and private. If you can't remember the Pali, I'll forgive you. I mean, you're not being graded on this anyway, but try if you can remember them. Pakati Visesa, Adi Visesa. Most importantly is if you can remember the three types, and it is useful to remember the suffixes. So from papa becomes pa-patara. This would be pa-patara. You add tara on the end. But for iya, you actually have to remove the a. So pa-piya. Tara and tama are probably more common than iya or ita. There's another one, iya, and there's igisaka, but as I've never seen it, I didn't include it. I'm assuming it's there somewhere. But again, these are not that common. Although Dhamma, you will see it. You will see both of these, Tara and Dhamma. Iya, you will see as well. They're just not that common. Ita, I don't see all that often.
Is there a difference, like, when you use one or the other?
I mean, if there is, it's been lost. I don't know it.
But you can use Tara and Iya as well?
Well, Tara and Iya are for the comparison.
Yeah, but it's the same meaning if I
Yes.
say pap. Okay.
There are many words like this. In Pali, there are often more than one ending or suffix that means the same thing. And whether they had a distinction is hard to say. Sometimes you can, after reading a lot of text, get a sense of how one was used more than another or in a specific way. In this case, I don't think there's any appreciable difference. And again, I think Tara and Dhamma are much more common than the other two. Especially this one, which I don't think is very common at all. Okay, the third type, Sabbanama. Sabbanama, again, what we would call pronouns. Pronouns are used in two ways. There's not really two types of Sabbanama. There's two ways of using them, I think. One way is you use it instead of the noun. So rather than thinking of two different sets, it's not really two different sets. It's two different ways of using them. So if you just say so is from the, so and sa are from the third person personal pronoun ta. So is actually irregular, and sa, they're irregular forms. Ta is the actual root. But regardless, this is the same word. This is the masculine version. This is the feminine version. And used alone, they can refer to, of course, the thing that they're referring to. So instead of saying man all the time, the reason for using pronouns most importantly is to avoid saying the same person. Like you wouldn't read in a book, the Buddha went here, and then the Buddha did this, and then the Buddha did that, and the Buddha said this. You give it up and instead say he. So, and there was a woman, sa. You use it in the place of the thing. The other reason for using them is as it's called Visesana Sabbanama. Visesana, to make it special. And that just means to emphasize some specificity, in fact. That doesn't make it special. It's just to specify, which I guess does come from something like special. You specify it makes it special? I'm not sure. I guess they're related. So instead of replacing it, you combine them. And the purpose of this is for specificity. Instead of purisa, you'd say so puriso, that purisa. Sa nari, use them together. Both of these are very common. This one in particular, because a lot of the texts are not referring to first person or second person. Third person is very common in the texts. Learning this pronoun and all of its many forms for the different declensions is going to be important. You'll notice as well here, Sabbanama also, like Gunanama, in a way they're just, in this usage they're kind of just like another Gunanama, but they have a different purpose. The declension follows the Nama. So Puri says the Nama becomes Puriso, and because it becomes Puriso, because it's being used in this way, so Sa or Ta is also used in this way, and it's declined the same, becoming so Puriso. Whereas when it's associated with Nari, it changes, it becomes feminine, and it uses Sa Nari, that woman. Clear? Here's an example. Sorry, if you have questions, go ahead. But here's an example. If you were to say this means if a Purisa should go to the forest or were to go to the forest, then you wouldn't say the Purisa, the man. You would say he. So he should cultivate sati, mindfulness, because otherwise he'll be very afraid in the forest of ghosts and wild animals and stuff. It's a simple example. I think I made it up about how you would use Sabbanama to replace a Nama. Clear?
Is there a polite form, or is as in English?
Polite form, what do you mean?
I mean you with a capital Y. Or him.
Like if you're referring to a king or something, or a Buddha?
Yeah, or to Buddha.
You use titles like Bhante.
Okay.
But here this isn't talking to someone, this is third person. And that's not those are a different set. They're called alapana. Those are all under the category of abhyaya. They are indeclinable. So Bhante, for example, is indeclinable. Wait a second. No, I'm wrong here. That's not correct. Bhante is. There are words like that are, but that isn't a sabbanama. Sabbanama are not used like that. Well, sorry, twang is. No, yeah, they are in speech. So you would say twang for you. Right. So the answer to your question, two things. First of all, you use nouns. You convert nouns into alapana. So if you're talking to papa, if you're talking to someone who is evil, you would say papa. And this is how the alapana, it actually looks like the alapana just out of coincidence. So if you're speaking to someone, you actually use this form of it, papa. Or if someone is more evil, you'd say papia. If someone says, I'm less evil than that person's more, and you say, no, you're papia. Say, yeah, you are. I'm not actually sure if you use it that way. No, so you only use this if you're calling them. If you say, hey, the more evil person, you use this. But the other thing is, yes, you do use, like, when you're talking to someone, you use twang. But if it is a Buddha, how you make it special, which is the answer to your question, is you pluralize it. So you'll see in cases, instead of saying twang, the word wo or tumhe is used. Anyway, the plural form is used instead of the singular. And also with verbs, you'll see the same pluralization for respect.
Thank you.
Like German, you'd say ear for respect and plural.
Yep. That's the way they do it.
Really? I thought it was Z.
Hey, I'm Z. You're at Z. I'm sorry. You're right.
Sorry.
Okay, so speaking of this sort of thing here, we were just talking about when it is you, when it is a second person. These are the three types of Purisa Sabbanama. So remember, Purisa is where it's replacing. Yeah. So replacing is first person, second person, third person. There are three types. So if you're talking about he, she, it, or they, you use the first one. If you're talking about you, if you want a word for you, tuang, tumha. Tumha is the plural, but tumha is the root that they refer to. Ta, tumha, amha. There are other ones. There are other third person ones. That is not the only one. That means he, she, it, or they. But if you're talking, but that is that thing. If you're talking about this one, then there's a different word. It's not that. It's either eta or, and we'll learn about these later. Eta or idang. Anyway, that's not so important. You don't have to learn that yet. What you do have to learn here, and one important rule to remember, is that the people are backwards. Patama Purisa, and this is a grammatical term that's going to be important when we talk about verbs. Patama Purisa is what we would call third person in English. But Patama means first, and Purisa means man, so the first person, basically. First person in Pali is our third person. Dutiya is the same. Our second person is their second person. And their third person is our first person. It's just a quirk of grammar that you're going to have to remember. If you're, when I talk about it, if I say first person, I actually won't say first person. I'll give you an easier way. But third person comes first, and they call it the first person. I'll refer to these as 1, 2, and 3, and I'll explain that a little better later on. So when I say 1, it's referring to Patama Purisa. If I say 2, it's referring to Dutiya. And you'll see how that works. There's a code that we use.
But what's the difference between ta and so?
Again, so is a form of ta. It's irregular. Ta is irregular.
Okay.
So is a masculine form of ta. Ta is the word the dictionary form. That's how it's referred to. It's referred to as ta. But it takes on many different forms. It has a whole paradigm, it's called. If you don't know these kind of languages like German or Latin or something, you're in for a surprise about paradigms. That's where the bulk of our memorization is going to come, memorizing paradigms. Okay, that's not too fast, is it? Recap, maybe? So today we're only talking about Nāma. That's what I should have said as well, that all of what I'm talking about is only this first part, Nāma. Today we're learning about Nāma, but there's a lot in Nāma. There's 3 types. They're grouped together because, again, first of all, they do all, in some sense, refer to a thing, and in another sense, second of all, they are all declined the same. They have the same rules and types of declension. So Nāma are the actual names. Guna can be used as names, but they are actually qualities. Sabbanama are used to replace or specify, 2 different ways. They're called this, but it's actually the same thing. Purisa Sabbanam, Visesana Sabbanam. It's the same word, right? So if you say so equals Puriso, or if you say so Puriso, it's still so. But nonetheless, there are 2 types of Sabbanama, Purisa Sabbanama and Visesana Sabbanama. So remembering, you don't have to, if you can remember these words, great, but most importantly is be able to tell me what are the 2 different types and how are they used. This one replaces it or used in its place. This one is used for specifying. So Purisa, but again, if it was this Purisa, you would say ayang. Ayang, because Ida is also irregular. So ayang Puriso would mean this man. And if it was, there's another one which means eso, which is not this, not that. It's kind of, it's also this, but it's a little bit different from the proper this. It's kind of that one right here kind of thing, instead of that one over there. There's three, and we'll learn about those later. But the point being, there are different Visesana Sabanamas. I mean, and they are also used as Purisa Sabanamas. So if you wanted to say, if you're referring to this man, you would just say ayang. You can just use ayang, meaning this one, this man. You don't have to say Purisa. Not that common, but is used. Okay, should we stop there? How are you all doing? There's not much, well, there is much more. Probably we should stop there. I don't know how gung-ho you all are to take in information.
Homework, that's good for me.
That's enough for now, no?
What would our homework be?
Yeah, what's homework?
Your homework will be memorizing all that I just taught.
Okay.
Not what I said, but all of the stuff on the page. So you should memorize these three. You should memorize these three.
Okay.
These two.
These two.
These three. I mean, if you can't remember the Pali words, that's fine. It's good if you can. Most importantly is you're able to answer questions about these things. The two types of Sabanama and the three persons.
Purisa Sabanama. Okay.
Bhante, is there a dictionary you would recommend, like an online dictionary?
Well, I'd recommend the digital Pali Reader mostly.
Oh, you can look up words there.
Oh yeah, it's got everything.
Okay.
It's a Swiss Army knife. It's got so much in it. If you go to tools, you'll see many dictionaries. So you've got the analysis is what the tool is based on. It analyzes a given word like Buddhasa. And Buddhasa is not in a dictionary, but if you analyze it, it will tell you that Buddhasa comes from Buddha, of course. But it'll do that with any conjugated word. But if you want to look up an actual dictionary word, you use one of these. Probably use this one because it has all three. And then you just look up, you can't look up Buddhasa, then you have to look up Buddha. And then you get a whole bunch of words that start with Buddha.
Mm.
And these are all dictionaries. So this is the big dictionary. Yeah, and here's the big, if you want to learn what a Buddha is. Lots of information. But then, of course, you have the small dictionary, which just gives you a simple definition, but also gives you the conjugations. Buddho, Buddha. So this is a paradigm here. And the vocative should probably be last. This isn't quite nice, but Buddho, Buddha. So ignore this one because a paradigm should have this at the end. Buddho, Buddha, Buddhang, Buddhe, Buddhena, Buddhehi, Buddhaya, Buddhasa, Buddhanang, Buddha, Buddhasma, Buddhamha, Buddha. Yeah, I don't know about that one. Buddhehi, Buddhasa, Buddhanang, Buddhe, Buddhasming, Buddhesu. And then this would be at the end, Buddha, Buddha. So that's the sort of thing you're going to have to memorize in a couple of weeks.
Those are the declensions, right?
Yeah, it's called a paradigm.
Oh, paradigm. And I guess that's like a set of conjugations, like basically like what remembering like how to conjugate. I only know like in Spanish you would memorize like I don't know, estar, estamos, ella, usted, stuff like that. Is that basically what a paradigm is?
Probably verbs.
Oh yeah, and verbs, yeah.
Mostly verbs, I think, right? Do they conjugate nouns? How does that work?
No, yeah, you're right.
In French, there's je and moi, but it's not really a conjugation. In Pali, because there are prepositions in these languages, like à moi, to me. Means is a preposition. To is a preposition. They don't have that in Pali, so you end up having sets not just for the verbs, you have sets for the nouns as well. Like Buddha.
Oh, I see.
And Buddha doesn't have its own set. Buddha follows Purisa. So Purisa and Buddha are declined the same way. We're getting quite ahead of ourselves. This is something you'll learn in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I'd recommend the digital Pali Reader. And what you can do, if you go to navigation, you can do DHP1, and you'll find the verse that you learned. So then, if you click on Manopu Bangama, you can hopefully get some good information on it. Now, I know someone posted a link already, but this will have the whole commentary as well. So here's the Chakopala that we're working on. Right. Here's the verse, and then if you want, so you can click on any word, and you can find out what it means, and get some idea about the conjugation or the declension as well. Kutumbika. What is a kutumbika? Well, look at this word. Okay. A man of property, the head of a family. So pretty soon, I think once we start getting into declensions, I might just set you guys free to, if you want, depending on how ambitious you are, to start going through lessons of the Chakopala. And using the digital Pali Reader to do so. Like that's the sort of immersion method where I give you something you're totally unprepared for. And then you just try to muddle through it using a reader, which the digital Pali Reader was designed for. And then, of course, you'll come back with all sorts of questions. But there's, I think, 16 or so lessons, so that's a lot for us. By the time you're finished, we'll already probably be finished the grammar. Anyway, I'll try not to start you too soon on that. But if some of you end up wanting to work ahead, we can talk about that. I'm quite impressed that so many of you have stuck with it. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know if I should be thanking you, but I do appreciate your interest. It's worth appreciating because I know this is hard, and it's quite easier to give it up. And I certainly wouldn't hold it against you if you did give it up, because of course this isn't core Buddhism. Okay, so what I usually like to do once we've finished with the grammar is switch to this text anyway and try and apply some of the things that we've talked about. Try to point out some of the things we've talked about. So maybe we'll do a little bit of reading first. Let's see if you guys can read through this. Take turns reading, not the verse now, but the actual prose. So let's maybe take turns starting with Alexander. Can you read? Did we already do this? No. I didn't have you read this yet, did I?
I think last time we read through the part you assigned. The first part.
The verse, right? Oh yeah, that's
verse.
Right. Okay, now let's move on to this. Try and do a little bit of this. Everyone take one sentence. And we'll just go through it quickly. Go ahead, Alexander.
Ayang Dhamma Desana Katha Bhasitati. Yeah. How do you do the question mark?
Bhasitati.
Bhasitati.
In this case, because it's not a yes or no question, you really wouldn't use the raising, I don't think. I think that's only for yes-no questions. Katha bhasitati. Maybe like we do it in English, I don't know. You emphasize this word because, well, no, that's an English thing. I'm not sure. Anyway, don't worry about rhythm for this either, because you're not singing this. You're not chanting this. You're saying this. Okay, next person.
Savatatiyam kama aravati sakupalateram. Savati.
No, that's enough. Next one, next person.
Savati Yankira Maha Suvano Nāma Kutumbiko Ahosi Ado Mahadano Maha Bogo Aputako.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, don't forget the dots. If it's got a dot, it's not a dental anymore. It's a retroflex. So Mahasuvarno, Varno, Nāma, Kutumbiko. And don't be careful not to aspirate. Kutumbiko. There's no aspiration. There's no t. It's ta. Kutumbiko. Ahosi. And this one as well. Ardho. These are retroflex with your tongue behind the alveopalatal ridge. But otherwise, really good. Oh, the M's are on top in this text. Sometimes. Why are some of them on top and some of them on bottom? How do I find and replace? Oh, what's going on? That isn't going to do what I wanted it to do. No, stop. Oops. Oh no, what did I do? It's okay. All right, next person.
Ante, I see NH there. Have we covered what sound that makes?
It's two letters, so they are each pronounced as we've learned them. Nah. It's rare. That's a rare thing to see. This refers to bathing. Naha is the root for in regards to bathing, or naha maybe.
So ekadiwasang nahanatitang nahatwa natwa agat.
That's okay. So stop there because this is going to be really long. Another thing you learn about sentences is that they just don't end. So why I stop here is because this is actually it would end here. Well, kind of. You can end there anyway. But this nahatwa ends a phrase. It's like a verb, and this one as well ends its own phrase. And then you could say that this one kind of ends its own, but not really. So, but this one here sort of ends its own phrase. It's talking about doing something and then doing something else, and then something else happened, and after that something else happened, but they just don't end the sentence. It'd be considered a run-on sentence in English. Be careful about your long and short. This is something you'll all have to work at. Like, these are all short. Eka di wa sang. And then you have one long here. Nahana deep tongue. Nahatwa. Natwa. Be careful that longs are long and shorts are short. Okay, next person.
Agachanto antara mage sampanat patasakam ekang wanapating diswa.
Next person.
Ayang Mahisakaya Evataya Parigahito Bhavisatiti
Short, it's still short.
Bhavisatiti.
And if you want to do rhythm, it's bhavisatiti.
Bhavisatiti.
Now I'm putting the stress probably in the wrong place, but if it was bhavisati, you put the stress on the vi. But because it's bhavisatiti, the stress is probably here.
Bhavisatiti.
Bhavisatiti. Bhavisatiti. Bhavis is long, right? Bhavisatiti. Bhavisatiti. Bhavisatiti.
Isn't the stress on sa?
No, because T is long.
Yeah, in this case, the second T is part of the word, right? It has two T's.
Yes. Yeah, like it's just because of iti coalescing with bhavisati. But bhavisati would be a short I, a short e, and then the stress would be on vis. Because this is don't worry too much about stress, because this is, I think, actually something I'm teaching from Sanskrit, and I'm not even sure 100% that it applies in Pali. I think it does, but I don't even think I was ever taught it in Pali. And don't worry too much about stress. Good to know, but like in this case, I don't even know if you'd put the stress on the long I. I think you do because, well, that's the rule, but it sounds kind of weird to say bhavisatiti. It's not that big a thing. And they probably didn't use it as rigidly as I taught it. Just a guess. Okay, let's go to here then.
Wow, those are some long words.
Just do it. No rhythm. Just sound it out. And try to be careful about long and short.
Tassa hittha bhagang sudha petva pakara parikepang kara petva.
And so I notice you guys are saying this like a V. It's not like a V, it's more like a W. Karapetwa. You'll hear much, I was told it's a little bit like a V, but nowhere have I heard it sounded in Pali like a V. In Thailand, in Sri Lanka, in Cambodia, Burmese, I think. Burmese is a little bit weird, but Karapetwa, twa, like a W.
I've heard it something between a V and a W, but more leaning towards W.
More leaning towards W, yeah. Like this isn't valukang, it's walukang, walukang. I don't think you don't hear much of a V anywhere anyone says it. Okay, let's just go to here.
Walukam okira petwa taja pata kum ussa petwa.
Good. Next person.
Vanapariting alankaritva anyam ling karitiwa.
Okay, this one, it sounds like you might have a Latin prejudice. J is ja. Anjaling. This will never be ya.
Anjaling.
Yeah, anjaling. Karitwa. Good. All right, let's give the long one here. Oh, is it no? Who's next? People who
I'm
came
sorry,
late.
Bhante. I'm not able to read today. Bhante, please skip me.
All right. Zay? Maybe not. Also came late, I think.
I can read.
That's okay.
What's the...
It was just a test. There's no need. So we can start to see, let's start to point out some of the things. Ayang, remember I mentioned ayang means this. And here it's used with Dhammadesana. Ayang Dhammadesana. So ayang here actually does agree with the on the end here, but it's complicated how they agree. So the declension is the same. It's just ayang is actually irregular. That's about the gist of it. So these are Nāma. This one is a Nāma. This one is a Visesana Sabbanama. It's Visesana because it's specifying which Dhammadesana. This Dhammadesana. Gang is also, but we'll learn about that later. Here. So here we have so. This one is not Visesana. It's nothing to do with Ekadivasang. Ekadivasang means one day. This is a totally different word. So is all by itself here, starting a sentence. So any guesses as to what it's referring to?
Him?
Yes, again, it's masculine. Do you have any idea which him? We can actually go back to the last sentence. And we can see a bunch of words, actually. This one ends in an O. This one ends in an O. This will be the first thing you pick up is the O's because it's third person singular, masculine. Very common. In fact, all of these O words here that are in this part are referring to the same person. This is his name, Nāma, right? Mahasuwano Nāma. His name is Mahasuwano. This is what he was. And these are Gunanamas. These ones are telling you more about him. Actually, fairly irregularly. This is a quirk of Pali to put these at the end, but they actually shouldn't be at the end. It's just how Pali actually works. It's a quirk of Pali and Sanskrit. The rule is don't put anything after the verb. This is the verb, and you just don't put stuff after it. And this is the one exception when you start talking about what someone is like, or what, yeah.
So the verb comes always at the end?
The rule is it comes at the end, and rules are made to be broken, as you'll see, but it's always good to keep rules in mind. Yeah. And we'll learn that fairly soon, I think. I guess maybe we won't until we learn verbs. Or I can just start talking about it now. The verb comes at the end, usually. Well, no. We'll talk about that much here. We're not there yet. What comes where? But here we have a Sabbanama. And what kind of Sabbanama is this?
The first one.
No.
The first one. Is it the first one? I think it's the first one. It has a name, Purisa Sabbanama.
Oh, yeah.
And if we keep going, here we have ayang again. Can anyone find any more Sabbanamas?
Is tasa?
Which one?
Tasa?
Yes, tasa is.
Tasa.
Tasa is a declined form of ta. It's the same word as so, it's just declined differently. Tasa is what we would say in this case a 6-1. Remember I said about code? This is the code you're going to learn. This is a 6-1 form of ta. And that code will be important when we talk to each other, when I try to tell you or you try to ask me about things.
But when a name of a person is introduced, you use Nāma after it?
Nāma means name. So if you want to talk about what someone's name is, you would, if you want to tell the audience what his name was, you do it like this.
Okay.
You don't have to, because quite often, well, we'll get into later where we talk about the Buddha, and it's not going to say Buddha Nāma, right? Or Tathagata. Although that's not quite his name. But no, you only when you want to, when you want to tell them what his name is, when to specify what someone's name is, this is how you do it. And we'll see that below when he names his sons as well. This is an indeclinable, this one here, just for reference. And you'll see declinables all over. This is an indeclinable, this is an indeclinable. These are abhyaya. Iti is an indeclinable. Diswa, anything, these ones are all indeclinable. The wa, you're gonna recognize a pattern here. Diswa is actually regular, it's usually twa. The twa ending is very, very common. You've seen it many times in this paragraph, and we'll learn about those later. it's kind of, it's not a declension, but kind of like one. Technically, they say it's not, but not, and atta is, but atta here is mixed with asa, but atta is indeclinable, not is indeclinable. What about the second paragraph? We got some sabanama here as well, right?
We have a sa.
Sa, that's feminine, right?
Yeah.
One feminine. So
Tassa.
is masculine. Sa, we got another tassa. Tassa, feminine. The long A's are all feminine.
Why do we have so tas?
Because this is the subject of the sentence, and this is referring to some other part of the sentence. So the subject is he, and the verb here is adasi. He gave. And tassa is here for one, or let me see. Tassa is 6-1, sorry, of her.
Oh.
Yeah. Skipping way ahead. He gave something to the thing. This is to the thing of her. I'm not going to spoil what he actually gave. You have to translate it eventually yourself. Although the translation's right below, so that's the thing about this Chakupala reader is that you can, with very little information, start to figure out the grammar on your own. You'll hopefully find yourself quite quickly going beyond what I taught and starting to figure out how the language works yourself, and then coming to me with questions when you don't understand it. So you actually less and less rely on the lessons because you start seeing and figuring things out on your own. The lessons are quite bare bones for that reason, because we're just going through the very basics. Well, I don't know how bare bones you think they are, but just some simple things help you to put the puzzle pieces together in the right way. So next week we will talk about these things which become important when you start to decline them and put them together. So actually, no, there's not a lot left for next week, but we'll get into paradigms, and I guess that's a big thing. Yeah, no, there is a lot with the paradigms. So we'll stop there. If you have questions, take more questions.
What is the D for? The ET?
The where?
Like at the end of all the quote, do they serve like as quote markers? The T.
ET. I talked about this before. You may not have heard, but ET is used as a. ET means thus. So when you say someone thought thus, the ET goes at the end. So you have to recognize there wouldn't have been quote markers. There wouldn't have been quotation marks. There would have just been this without the quotation marks. And you have to figure it out. The hard part is figuring out where the quote starts. One important thing for translating is to go slowly and meticulously, word by word, because simply glancing at it, it's very easy to make mistakes, to make assumptions that end up being wrong. If you don't go step by step, it's a hard language to pick apart for those of us who didn't grow up learning it. So it's very different from, say, English.
Would you go word by word from the last to the front, or in which
Well,
order?
we're not there yet. I can't quite remember when I'm going to start teaching you about translation, but there are rules that help you translate. Let's not jump ahead yet, because I'd have to explain too many things that we haven't gotten to yet.
I agree.
Sorry?
I agree.
Mm-hmm. But you can see quite quickly you'll start jumping ahead anyway, and we'll just the order will kind of go out the window as you start translating these things on your own. the immersion method. They do this in Thailand. They'll just start having the kids translate after they've learned a little bit of grammar, just have them translate. But the translations that they do are unfortunately mostly just memorizing the translations that are already written out. Like they'd memorize this Chakupala reader. They'd memorize, not this part, they'd memorize this page word by word. Deep question, ayang this, dhammadesana, they'd memorize it just like that. It's much more formal in Thai, but it's basically like this. Which is unfortunate because I tried teaching some of the novices who had done the translation, trying to explain to them why it was that way, and they just had no idea. The problem of just doing rote memorization is not having any understanding of the theory. In their defense, they were young kids.
But for me, it was useful to know the meaning when I memorized the code today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but so normally that, of course, that will be an important part of it. But the idea here, remember, our lesson is just rhythm, stress, and pronunciation. So for now, for that, in that one case, and we won't do much of that anymore. In that one case, we're just interested in learning the sounds. From now on, I won't put you through memorizing things that you don't understand.
Bhante, I had a...
Sorry, since I actually liked memorizing them. That was a cool thing.
Yeah. Well, I memorized each of the Dhammapada verses. I've never memorized the whole Dhammapada, but I would memorize each Dhammapada verse before I gave a talk on it. That's a great thing to do.
Bhante, I had a question, but it's not anything to do with Pali, so I was trying to save it for the very end.
Sure.
When we were going through Guna Nāma, you mentioned something about it is more evil to get angry at someone who is already angry, and I just wanted to ask why that is so.
It doesn't actually say why. It's an interesting quote. But the idea is that I think that we all get angry. When we come or going through the practice, defilements will arise and our relationships with each other, tempers flare up, right? But it only becomes a problem when we make it a problem. If someone gets angry, it's part of their bad habits. When you get angry back at them, you've brought it to another level. You've created an argument. Recognizing that is important. Not expecting people not to get angry, but not creating fights where you engage with other people's defilements. And so the simple point is engaging with people's defilements is worse than the actual defilement. It's not codified like that. The Buddha did say this, so it's important to remember. But it's, I would say, more like remarking on how it really takes it to another level. As people getting angry, good people can still get angry until they're anagami. But there's no problem until it becomes a problem between two people.
Sadhu.
Is that a verse somewhere, like Dhammapada or something?
It's not the Dhammapada. I think it might be Samyutta Nikaya, or maybe the Sutta Nipata. I actually can't remember. We had it on our wall. Someone made a scroll on our wall of it. Yeah, Samyutta. Taseva tena papiyo yo kudang patikuchati. It's a part of a longer verse. Ako dasa kuto kodo dantasa sammajivino sammadan danya vimuttasa upasantasa tadino taseva tena papiyo yo kudang patikuchati kudang apatikuchanto sangamang jeti dujayang. a person who doesn't get angry back at anger is victorious, wins a battle that is hard to win. Jeti is a verb. He wins the battle that is dujayam. Another thing to note about poetry is grammatical rules quite often go out the window. There's often many grammatical rules that'll be broken. But that's the same in English. So you can look up the Akosa Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, SN 72.